All right, we're ready for video number 3, the second sewing video. So we are starting with step number 22, which is making the zipper tabs piece. So I have a 2" by 1.5" piece. It's 2 inches tall, 1.5 inches wide. We are going to press this in half first, bringing the 2" long sides together. Press that in half, open that up, and then press each of the 2" raw edges into that center crease. And then we'll fold that in half again along that original crease, so now all of the raw edges are enclosed inside. And right now this piece is 3/8 of an inch wide and 2 inches long. So now we are going to cut this in half into 2 1" pieces. I'm just going to finger press that in half to mark the center, and then I'll cut it with my scissors. Alright, now we want to, on our zipper, so my zipper is a lot longer than it needs to be. You really should have like a 5" zipper maybe. And we're going to trim it, and we're going to actually trim the stops off both ends and then have these zipper tabs on. So I am going to, first I'm just going to trim this end off, and I'm actually going to trim the zipper pull right off too, and I'll show you why I do that. So it's raining outside and it seems pretty loud in here. We'll see how that goes, if it's too noisy. So we want the zipper to be exactly 4 1/4 inch long. So I'm just going to measure that. I'm going to make a mark, and I'll do the same on the other side so I can make sure I cut it straight. And I just used like not my good fabric scissors for this. I'm using an actual metal, a zipper with metal teeth. So you don't want to cut those with your good scissors. Alright, so just cut between the teeth. Okay, so here's my section that is 4 1/4 inch long. And then I'm going to take my pull off of that piece. I like to do it this way so that the zipper pull is on the zipper tape and not, or like in between, and one of the ends isn't open, if that makes sense. I'll show you. So I just separate the teeth at the closed end. So just remember which end had it closed to. Metal zipper tape is not typically 2-way. Some are, like specifically if it's 2-way, but otherwise they only work one direction. Oop. So I'm just getting that, both of the ends in there, making sure it's lined up. And then, see, I slide it like halfway so that both ends are closed. And that way it's just easier for me to sew the tabs on. So I am going to, I have a Elmer's washable school glue. And I just put some of that right inside the zipper tab. I use this school glue for installing my lining zipper pockets inside of bags also for the zipper. Alright, so now I can just place that tab right over the end. And I'm going to do the same for the other side. And this glue dries clear, so if it gets on anything, you won't see it. I mean, it might be shiny, so I don't try to get it anywhere, but alright, and then just slide that end right there into the fold. And then press the zipper tab down well. If you don't have a glue stick, you can just pin this in place or clip it in place to hold it. This just seems to hold it better for me while I'm top stitching. So then I'm going to top stitch along the zipper tab, 1/8 of an inch away from where the zipper is on that side. So since the zipper has metal teeth, I'm going to hand crank the sewing machine, and I broke my thread. Sometimes if the thread rubs just right on the teeth, it will break it. Not a big deal. I'm just going to rethread that. But you try to slide the needle right in between the teeth. Alright, let me pull those stitches out. Let's try that again. This is where nylon coil zippers are easier to work with because you can sew right over it. Your thread won't break. You just have to be careful sewing over the metal teeth because you don't want your zipper to hit it. I just adjust. If the needle is hitting the zipper and won't go into the fabric, I just lift up my presser foot slightly and move it out of the way ever so slightly. Alright, trim those threads. Do the same on the other end. Alright, so my zipper is now assembled. Step number 24, we want the main panel lining right side up, and on this end we want the zipper to close to the top. So this is the end it closes to. So we'll place that at the top of the wallet, and we want to just center this. So it should be 1/2 inch, I think, from each end. Let's see, this is 4 1/4 inches, and this is 5 1/4 inches. So yeah, you should have 1/2 inch on each end. And then I just clip that in place. Again, your zipper is right side down, and the lining main panel is right side up. Okay. So we are going to top stitch. I'm using a shorter stitch length, and you're going to sew this together using a 1/4 inch seam allowance. I have a zipper foot on my sewing machine, which is what I usually just sew with on my industrial machine. You'll pull the zipper head out of the way as you get to it. Zipper pull, I guess that actually is. And then just continue sewing the full length of the zipper at 1/4 inch seam allowance. Okay, now I'm going to take one of the zipper pocket lining pieces, and I'm going to place that right side down. So it's right sides together with the lining main panel, and the zipper is sandwiched in between. I'm going to clip that in place. Alright, and then I'm actually going to open my zipper so that it's out of the way, because I'm going to flip this over when I sew it and start sewing from this side. So I'm sewing directly over the stitching where I attach the zipper to the lining main panel. And you'll just sew at a 1/4 inch seam allowance again directly over the stitching from that previous step. feel yourself getting close to the zipper, just go ahead and slide that out of the way. Okay, so everything has been pressed away from the zipper here. We are going to top stitch from the right side using a stitch length of 4, and we are going to top stitch 1/8 of an inch from the zipper. Make sure that this is all, and I start at the very end, at the very top of the lining main panel fabric, and you might need to be patient to get it to jump over that hump there when you go up over the card slots. Slide your zipper out of the way, and again you'll want to use a zipper foot for this part. Alright, so now we're going to repeat that same process. On step number 27, we will lay the exterior, main panel exterior with the exterior accent panel to the left. Place the main panel lining with the zipper attached right side down on top. So it will be like this. You want to make sure that the zipper is centered on the left edge, and then clip that together. And then we are going to sew that together using a 1/4 inch seam allowance. I'm going to open my zipper so that it's not in my way. Make sure everything is lined up nicely. And I'm actually going to switch to a shorter stitch length, so I put it on 2.5. And then when you get near the zipper, pull, stop with your needle down, and close your zipper. And then readjust anything if needed. Continue sewing at a 1/4 inch seam allowance. All right, now I'm taking my other pocket lining panel, and I will place that, whoops, wrong way, right side down on top of the zipper. It will be right sides together with the other pocket lining panel. And I'm going to flip it this way because I'm going to sew from this side directly over the stitching from attaching the zipper to the exterior accent panel. And again, this is a 1/4 inch seam allowance. When you get near the zipper, stop with your needle down and pull the zipper pull out of the way. All right, now we want to press the lining pocket lining panel. What do I call that? Zipper pocket lining. Press the zipper pocket lining and the main panel exterior away from the zipper so that they're wrong sides together. Alright, we are going to top stitch along the zipper at a 1/8 inch seam allowance. and I changed my stitch length back to a 4. Move the zipper pull out of your way if you need to. And I still have a zipper foot on my machine. Alright, so that we're finished with step number 28. So now step number 29, we are going to stitch the card slots down. Alright, so first pull the pocket lining panel away from the lining main panel. Now line up the bottom of the card slots with the line that you drew on the lining main panel and pin in place. And now top stitch from the end of the third card slot to the top stitching along the zipper. And I do a few stitches and then back stitch and then stitch the rest of the way until I get to that top stitching, and then I'll back stitch a few times there as well. And now we're going to line the right side of the ID pocket up with the raw edge at the right side of the lining main panel. And I'm aligning the bottom edge with the line that we drew on the lining main panel. I'm going to clip those right sides, or clip the right side together. Everything is right side up here. And then I'm going to put a pin in this at the bottom of the lining main panel. Once I have the card slots aligned with that line I drew, I will pin. And here I'm going to sew along this right side using a 1/8 inch seam allowance. Let me trim this actually a little bit. Trim some of those strings off. Okay, so that I can see what I'm doing. Okay, so I'm going to sew this together using a 1/8 inch seam allowance. And then I'm going to top stitch along the bottom edge until I get to the end of the ID pocket. So not the ID backing, which is the second piece, but just this first slot here. Using a 1/8 inch seam allowance. You want to stop when you're 1/8 of an inch away from the bottom of the card slots panel. Oh wow. Alright, I think I'm going to actually turn my sewing machine off and stop until the storm passes. Alright, so it's still raining, but it seems that most of the storm has passed. So we just did step 30. We top stitched, or basted this edge, top stitched along the bottom here of the card slots. We are now going to take our lining flap lining, place it right side up with the long straight edge at the top. You want to measure 2 3/4 of an inch from the top straight edge, centered, and make a mark. And then centered over that mark, you will take the washer from the male side of your magnetic snap and you will mark the prong placements. I already went ahead and fused a scrap of the Decoville to the wrong side of the flap. And now you'll take your seam ripper and just cut those slits for the prongs to slide through. And again, you can put some fray check on these slices so that they don't fray and that your snap doesn't fall out. Pop the male magnetic snap through the slots. Put the washer on the back, and again, I like to press my tabs open because everything lays flatter that way. If you like to press them closed, go ahead and do that. I think some people say that it's stronger if you press them to the center instead of out. So, all right, my male side of my magnetic snap is attached. And now I'm going to take my whole wallet. I'm going to lay this flap right side down, matching the left edge, nope, the right edge. Maybe I really don't know my left and right. And I'm going to clip that in place. And then we will sew along that clipped edge only using a 1/4 inch seam allowance. And I back stitched here. Some of this is a little bit thick because you are sewing through the end of the ID window slots. Now I'm going to press the flap away from the lining, the wallet lining, and the seam allowance will be up toward the... Okay, now I'm going to top stitch through the flap and that seam allowance using a 1/8 inch seam allowance. Alright, that was step 33. So now we need to unzip the zipper. Very important step because you will turn the wallet right side out through that zipper. So we are going to match the lining pockets up, right sides together. If you look here, oh, this is hard to hold up. The zipper will be pushed in toward the lining. So here's the zipper. It pushes in toward the zipper lining pockets, like that. And the exterior accent panel and the lining main panel will be right sides together, and the seam allowance will be toward the main panels. So very important, the zipper is pushed in this way. We are going to clip together along the short edges of the lining main panel. We're leaving this bottom edge, or well, the far right edge, we're going to leave open. We're not sewing that closed. And make sure that the seams here match up with each other. And I'm only pinning down as far as where the bottom or the end of that stitching is, where I attached the card slots to the lining main panel. Make sure that my exterior accent panel and lining main panel seams line up here. My zipper is pushed toward the lining. And as you can see, the where the lining bubbles up in the center, because of it being longer, the lining main panel is longer than the card slots panel. And that is on purpose because it allows the wallet to fold in half better. All right, but we're only going to sew halfway. So I'm going to sew down this side and then stop, and then I'm going to sew down that side and stop. I'm going to use a shorter stitch length, and I'm using a 1/4 inch seam allowance. All right, and the zipper tab is right here. So you just want to make sure that when you get to that, you're sewing directly next to the zipper tab. So a zipper foot is helpful for this. Whatever you need to use to get real close to the zipper tab, but not through it. You do not want to sew through the zipper tab. And make sure you back stitch well at the end. All right, and then I'll start from this end, 1/4 inch seam allowance again, back stitching, just pull the clips off as you go. When you get to the zipper tab, make sure that you're sewing directly next to it, but not through it, and maintain that 1/4 inch seam allowance. And then make sure you don't sew over any folded up portions here. So you really want to only sew about as far as where you top stitched that, or you can, I mean, I'm going to sew a little bit further than that. Sew down as far as you can where it's flat along the bottom. So see, everything was matched up there. The tricky part will be sewing this part where it bubbles up. So now I'm going to continue clipping this together. I'm going to match up the end points and start there. Everything will fit. The lining, the overall lining with the lining flap attached is the same length as the overall exterior main panel. It just seems like the lining is shorter because of where this is bubbled up in the center. So you just have to be extra careful when you pin everything in place and sew it together to be patient with that part. Finished. You may have to seam wrap. But I find it easier to sew this together 1/2 at a time. So that way you can kind of adjust everything as you go. And we're working around those card slots, which are inside, but they do not stretch. So see, I just kind of stretch that along. The card slots are inside there. The lining and exterior fabric are not wrinkled, like they match. So you just have to kind of adjust it as you sew. The trickiest part, again, is the bottom, because those card slots are sewed to the lining main panel. See how I just kind of slide that out of the way? So I'm going to start sewing right here. I'm going to leave this opening for now, and we'll come back and close that up after we sew around the rest of this. Again, when I get to the curve at the bottom, or at the end of the flap, I take it nice and slow, one stitch at a time, lift my presser foot to adjust, just to get a real nice curve on that portion. If you go around the curve faster, it won't be as neat. And then when I get to the corners, I stop with always with my needle down. Whenever you lift the presser foot, your needle should be down. And then adjust. Alright, so now where this is wrinkled, I'm going to stop. Get a little bit further, and I'm going to stop with my needle down. And I'm just going to slide that fabric. If you pull it, it moves the wrinkles to back behind the needle. Match that edge up. See, and that's just adjusting for the shorter card slots that are inside. And I'm going to sew all the way to the ending of the previous stitching and back stitch while there. Alright, now back over here to the open spot along the bottom. You really only have about 1 inch that's not sewed. Do you see how I am pulling this? So I pull the lining and the exterior so that they're straight. And then I'm going to slide that under my zipper foot, or my presser foot, while I'm pulling it nice and taut. And then I'm just going to stitch across that opening. Alright, let's get all of our threads trimmed up. So now, let's see, that was step number 35. We are so close. So step number 36. Did I go over trimming the seam allowance? Hang on. Oh, I did. Okay, so the angled edge of the flap, you want to trim the seam allowance down to 1/8 of an inch so that when you turn it right side out, that it turns easier. So I'm just trimming around the end. Like that. I'm going to trim these corners. Be careful not to trim through any of your stitching. And then I'm going to turn this all right side out through the zipper. So that's why it was important to make sure your zipper was unzipped. Oh, I only have about 4 more minutes left and this video is going to cut off. Alright, so I'm just turning everything right side out. This can be a little tricky, so just be patient and work with it. It's mostly tricky because of the thickness of everything. And then I also have a turning tool, which was a tube turner, a part of a tube turner set that I had from Joann's, and I just used the stick out of it. Alright, So once that's all turned right side out, I'm going to put the stick in here and just push the ends out. See how I glide it right along the seams? Pull any stray threads that I see. Alright, so now I'm going to go to my ironing board and press this nice and flat. When you press this portion here, this isn't going to press flat because that exterior and lining part are longer, so I just kind of press under here and then press inside of the pocket as well. So I'm going to press all that flat and then I'll be back. Okay, so I've pressed everything pretty decently. My lining pocket is still unsewn. Now I'm going to take the Decoville, which this is the heavier Decoville, not Decoville Light, and I'm going to slide it adhesive side toward the exterior in through the hole in the lining, in the pocket lining, and just kind of work it until I get it down. You want it to be all the way down in the tip, and I do my best to make it so it is so that the seam allowance is pushed under the Decoville, so it's adhering completely to the exterior. And I push it under the seam along the zipper, like the zipper seam should be on the back side of the Decoville. So I just work that all the way around so that it is nice and flat and all of the seam allowances are under the Decoville, so that you don't have this weird bump. I don't know if you can see that. So see how the side's nice and smooth. So I'll just keep working that to get the Decoville slid into here completely, with the seam allowance on the other side. And then I'm going to fuse that in place. Okay, I have the Decoville is completely fused. I went ahead and pressed the ends, the raw end of the opening of the zipper pocket lining panels in by 1/4 of an inch. I'm going to edge stitch along those pressed edges to close the hole in the bottom of the zipper pocket. I'm going to press the zipper pocket down inside. You can use your turning tool to get it pressed in there really well. All the way down. Zip my zipper closed. Alright, and then... Okay, so to finish up the video, I actually went ahead and changed my presser foot to one that will help me get a better top stitch. I feel like if I use my narrow presser foot on this, it wants to slide off the edge. So I'm going to sew through this pink portion only with white thread, and then I'm going to top stitch the other portion in the gray thread. So I normally wouldn't do this in 2 parts, but I feel that I don't like the look of the white thread on the darker fabric, and I don't want the gray thread on the pink fabric. So just to the edge of the pink part, and then I'm back stitching a few stitches. And you are sewing next to, but not through, the card slots panel. Go ahead and trim threads here. Alright, and then on this side, I'll do the same, and I'm only sewing along the pink portion. So as long as your fabric is something that will look okay with one color of thread, I would do this in one pass, not two separate. And I'm using my longer top stitch length also. Take it slow at the end, it's a little bit thick near the zipper. Okay. Trim the threads. And then I'm going to leave the white thread in the bobbin, so I go take the bobbin out, that's done. I'm going to leave the white thread in the bobbin. I'm going to change the top thread to dark gray, so that way when I top stitch, it'll show the white thread on the pink fabric. I would use pink, honestly, but I don't have that color pink. Alright, so now I'm going to start here at the beginning of the blue fabric and resume top stitching at a 1/8 inch seam allowance. I'll just sew a few stitches first and then back stitch, and then just as you get to this part where it's bumped up in the center, you just have to kind of work with it, but it will lay flat. I don't know how to explain. I guess just if you watch what I'm doing, I kind of just adjust it as I sew. Like as I sew over part, then I pull some of the fabric towards the back. So then it's bumped up in the back and straight in front of my needle, if that makes sense. And then as you get to the flap, you'll want to do your top stitching slowly, one stitch at a time again around the end, lifting up your presser foot as you go to make sure that you have a nice top stitching. All right, and then we will trim our threads and everything is done. My bobbin thread got a little wadded up there. Okay, so threads are trimmed and the wallet is complete. So what I would do now is just give it a press so that it holds that shape folded, and you're good to go. See how the bottom rises here? And that allows it to fold nicely.